here. It's such a pleasure to have you addressing our group today. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And for those of us that are close to the body of work that you do, we know that very often you are not allowed to be the face of the message, if you will, when it's finally presented. But please know that we all know how much the team that you lead is making happen in Baton Rouge, and we're extremely appreciative. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for that acknowledgement. I do have a great team, and we do move quietly in the background oftentimes, and some really great things are happening. So glad to have the opportunity to share some of that with you today.
Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, CCIM members from around the state of Louisiana. We're thrilled this morning to have the head and director and secretary of the Louisiana Economic Development Department. For those that don't know, in January of 2016, Governor Edwards appointed Don Pierson to lead this major and most important department in state government, Department of Economic Development. Before that, Don served as the LED's assistant secretary and senior business development director since January of 2005. Under Secretary Pierson's leadership, LED became the only state agency, think about this, in the United States recognized as an accredited economic development organization by the International Economic Development Council. Before coming to LED, Don served for 17 years in the northern part of the state in the Shreveport-Bossier area as executive director of the Greater Bossier Economic Development Foundation. And lastly, what I know he's proud about, and we certainly are as well, he's a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point and served as an airborne ranger and a qualified infantry officer in the 82nd Airborne Division for 5 years. And Don does a fantastic job leading this great and important department for the state of Louisiana. And we are so thrilled to have him update you on the progress they're making and all the wonderful things they're doing to bring economic development to the state of Louisiana. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the one and only Don Pierson, LED Director and Secretary.
Norman, you may have a permanent position to introduce me. Great job with that. I don't know about the most important department at the state. Health and hospitals, DOTD, the road builders, and corrections might rank above me in the minds of some, and certainly it ranks above me in my mind. But we have a great responsibility and execute on behalf of the citizens in so many different ways. Little shout out to Jimmy Ferguson over there. I got to use the Jimmy because his dad is Jim Ferguson to me. I do go way back in economic development circles with his dad, and great to have you on the call today. Great that it's being recorded so that you may share this with additional members that weren't able to make the call here today. I think we do have some important and valuable information to kind of share, and certainly an audience that we get to work with from time to time at LED. And certainly I've got a great sense of where you're coming from in that I'm still not an active realtor, but still have license, and did that for a number of years in my early career when I was involved in real estate and construction and development. So great stuff, and I recognize how important it is to advancing economic development in the state. So today I'll kind of give you an overview. We'll jump over to a formal presentation that I have, but because of your specific interest in real estate and the industrial and commercial transactions that are out there, I want to drill down and talk to you about some of the more current things that are going on that I would think you have an interest in. And then if we've got some time available at the end, happy to take some questions from you. So with that, if you share our screen and you can see the opening screen there, we'll speak to that. Certainly 2020 dominated by the pandemic and causing us to really have to do a lot in terms of addressing some of the outcomes that were unfolding there. A large impact on our small businesses. The governor never shut the state down, so critical infrastructure, critical workers, construction industry continued to move forward. We got a lot of dominant features in advanced chemical manufacturing. The plants, the refineries, the LNGs continue to operate. So that was fortunate for us. But it left really the biggest impact in terms of the economy coming and falling directly on our small business sector. So we took efforts to help them stand up in e-commerce. We put together a loan guarantee program. It was a crowded sector in a good way, because SBA's PPP program and the economic injury disaster loan program sort of dominated that sector. But we did have a low documentation, easy to operate loan guarantee program that we rolled out. And then importantly, the governor asked me to co-chair the Resilient Louisiana Commission, in which we undertook a large exercise in developing a strategic plan for our state to make us more resilient. And that's different than stronger. That's less vulnerable to things. And all of today's notes and information you can find at opportunitylouisiana.com. So if you go there, you can push over to the Resilient Louisiana Commission report, which is basically the distillation of some 400 pages of information, term papers, if you will, that were turned in by the 15 task force groups that were assigned to look into different segments of the economy. And we then distilled that information down into about 45 pages. So it's a light read, but it really gives you all the conceptual information to understand what's necessary, both at the federal level, the state level, the commercial level, the citizen level, of the best ways to advance and make our state more resilient in the future. Coming off of that, part of it was, again, to make sure that we were taking advantage of all the programs in Washington, D.C. While Congress rolled out programs as available, it became incumbent upon states and others to actually fill out the paperwork, make the applications, and secure the benefits of the programs up there. So I was very pleased that we went after an initiative to gather some of those funds. The CARES Act pushed $1.5 billion over to the Economic Development Administration. That's a subset of the Department of Commerce. And that money had never been made available before. And when I did the math of taking 1.5 billion and dividing it by 51, I figured very quickly that Louisiana's share of that would be maybe $30 million. We secured $3 million in technical assistance for Louisiana companies. And then they said, well, that's all the candy that you get. I couldn't accept that. And so we ghosted a number of other organizations and made applications, continued to make applications for funding, and secured pretty close to $26 million of federal monies coming into the states for various projects. So pushing out, one of the other things that became a priority for us, we were planning the second term of Governor Edwards' administration and wanted to see a lot more emphasis on rural development in Louisiana. And so at opportunitylouisiana.com, you'll see a rural microsite with some of the emphasis that we're putting on development in our rural communities. I would argue that we've been engaged in the rural communities for a long time. It's a problem across America that those areas are declining. The young people are moving to metro areas, and for reasons that millennials have. But essentially, we've never ignored that. And so one of the things we're doing is just aggregating a lot of the information around our rurals and emphasizing when we get rural wins and staying active as we have been in the rural communities, particularly with rural. You're looking at the broadband issue, which became very apparent during the pandemic, and that's outlined in the Rural Resilient Louisiana Commission report. But the biggest part of that, for your quick understanding today, and I know many of you probably have a great deal of information on this, but there's no silver bullet. There's no one answer, no big check that you're going to write and take care of all of your broadband issues. And keep in mind that digital deserts exist not only in the rural communities, but also in urban areas. And even if you could paint all of our rural communities today with broadband, you'd still have people that haven't had the training to go up and use a tablet to conduct telehealth or distance learning or e-commerce. So a lot of issues wound up in this. A lot of federal monies coming down through the FCC, through the American Jobs Act, a number of sources that are pushing funds. Some parishes in Louisiana are even undertaking their own initiative to make sure they've got full broadband coverage, and it is important. But it's a multifaceted element right now, and so a lot of things are underway with that. Certainly the opportunity zones, and we'll talk more about the certified sites program that we have today, are other critical features to the development of rural areas across our state. We've got a great small business support team here, an award-winning team. Again, a lot of focus on small business initiatives, and not saying that small business is maybe that startup, that brand new company. We put a lot of focus on what is in economic development terms considered gazelles. Those are the companies that are capable of rapid growth. They're in certain sectors of the economy that are projected to grow, technology, et cetera, and have the ability to add a lot more jobs quickly. So programs there with executive roundtables and other engagements that we have to accelerate that growth in the mid-sized companies is another one of the important features that we're executing against. Of course, the coin of the realm in economic development will always be your talented workforce. A company won't locate where they can't gather the necessary skill sets they have and they need to operate effectively. So we're very proud. For 11 years, we've had the #1 workforce training program in the nation. I would point out that you can't do this like bowling, playing darts, or some element where the targets are always the same. This is a rapidly changing elements of what's required out there. The sophistication levels by all our competing states are getting very much stronger. However, we've stayed ahead of the curve with things like augmented reality and virtual reality training modules for ExxonMobil, where you can actually step into a room and a fire breaks out and you have to utilize the fire extinguisher. I don't do this very well when I've put the goggles on and tried it, but it's a great training methodology. We've done about 20 of those in support of Exxon's expansion in Baton Rouge. It was part of the package, and very proud of this work that we've done, and not only in direct training, but we've put together a great back-end artificial intelligence driven search engine that can identify from across America workers that are needed and make job offers, and certainly put things together in a very rapid pace. And Fast Start is just that, fast, and that's critical to it. This is something that's really critical as well. We can talk more about it later in the presentation, but this is around our pivot in energy. And it's not a pivot like we're going to drop the foundation of what we've had that's powered our economy for decades in oil and gas. It's just to say that we are at a moment in which we want to diversify our energy portfolio to grasp the elements that are going to be dominant in the future. So wind production in the Gulf of Mexico, the solar arrays that we see, carbon capture and sequestration is an important feature with a lot of real estate impacts, by the way. Renewables, we've long been a state strong in renewables. Nobody's just paid a lot of attention to it. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of the paper mills and plants that have been powered in terms of boiler fuel with wood waste from the forest, not cutting down the trees that we have just to feed them into the boilers, but obviously gathering wood waste has been something that we've long been involved in. Today, far more sophistication than that. We can talk about some of the sawmills that are locating in our state. Those are now running at about $150 million a clip. The computer looks at the log. It checks Wall Street to see which dimensional lumbers are selling at the highest values, and then decides whether it'll cut 2x6s, 2x12s, or what have you, knocks those out. Now, the waste is, these mills are now located, and this is great to integrate back into the real estate equation. They triangulate. They want a lumber mill that's not only in the wood basket with ready supply, but they want to be too far from pulp and paper production, because a lot of their wood waste will go there. And also, if possible, how they create pellets from further waste, and a lot of stuff that comes off the forest floor from the harvesting operations is converted into these pellets that then go on to rail cars, which then come down to Baton Rouge, to those two white domes that you see as you come across the bridge, where ocean-going vessels secure those pellets and take them over to the United Kingdom, where they are burned to generate electricity, creating a renewable resource in Europe. So a lot of value add there in the Louisiana chain. We get to harvest, produce pellets, have rail cars move, and have port commodity move, all associated with that. But this is just one piece of this energy pivot that we're experiencing today. And I don't want to be too glib about this, but I do want to make the point that for oil and gas, it's not going away. I mean, I get it that we're going to burn a lot less refined fuels in the gas stations, because we're going to plug our cars in, and that GM's going to produce all electric in 15 years. But all the other hydrocarbon molecules are just rearranged, and they're a part of our homes, our cars, our healthcare, all the plastics, all the things that we do, advanced chemical manufacturing, all the things that power life are really going right back to those oil and gas molecules. So we're going to continue to have a need to provide our nation and the globe with these energy resources, and with these building blocks for all the things of life. So I sometimes feel like there's a little bit of an overstatement about the what's happening in the industry, but clearly what's happening is nationally and globally a very big transitional period, and we can talk more about that, but I'll move on here. Smart Port Initiative, something I'm really proud of. There's a tremendous amount of change ongoing in the supply chains today, and this is going to relate all the way back to distribution centers and things that you have an interest in. But we got prepared for the widening of the Panama Canal, larger vessels than have ever been sailed and delivering container cargoes these days. So that was important. It's different for us. But the Smart Port Initiative here would take advantage of our tremendous strength in the lower Mississippi River Channel, which is basically the Baton Rouge Port, the Port of South Louisiana, and Port of New Orleans. And for the first time, use the technologies available in an integrated manner to create far better information that results in outcomes that are very powerful in terms of these shipments. And a few examples here. And you kind of think of this as if you use Waze when you drive your car, that it's a type of Waze on the water. Certainly it's using a very low cost data collection system, just as Waze does when people are driving around. But here, tugboat operators have a depth finder, and it's telling them that the depth of the Mississippi River is where they are. They need to know that because the river's constantly changing in its draft, simply because, first of all, it's catching every raindrop and every snowflake that falls between the Appalachians and the Rockies. Now, all those feeder rivers and creeks come to the Mississippi River flowing by my office right outside my window every day. So depending on the volume of all this water collection throughout America, then this deposits are changing where soil is building up, causing possibly draft issues in the river. Other things that will impact storms, collisions, loose barges, all kinds of elements You can think of it as an air traffic controller in the sky, looking at all the things in the planes that are coming around. And we'll later drill down into cargoes that are on these various vessels. If they're trying to approach from the Gulf, if there's a storm in the Gulf, what will the impacts be on arrival times, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is a function of being able to put to those depth finders on those tugboats, shoot that up to the cloud, use big data and integrate all that information and create a dashboard of river depths. There's been cases of vessels that run aground and have to be offloaded so that they lift and their draft changes. And logistics operations such as that can take several days and millions of dollars to achieve. So this simple methodology of collecting data from the tugboats is going to create a whole new wave of technology that we're going to harness. When we started this, I'm thinking to myself, well, aren't they already doing this in New York or Long Beach or somewhere? No, we're on the cutting edge of this. And as you can see, I have a little passion for it because it's an exciting use of our technology. Working on putting together a space campus on the doorstep of Michoud Assembly Facility over there in the Great New Orleans East area. It's an exciting development that we're sort of modeling the water campus, if you haven't seen it in Baton Rouge. A tremendous opportunity here that we're developing integration of science, education, and commercial utilization. Want to build a similar campus over there for Boeing and Lockheed. They need this kind of modern office space to attract their young engineers. And again, maybe a bit of a long story there, but trying to leverage what we're doing. We are leading America through the space launch system that's put together by Boeing, which has the Orion space capsule, which we are also putting together at Michoud. You'll see a launch of this most powerful rocket ever made, probably in early 22. They were hoping to finish by 21, but the Biden administration is committing dollars to the continuance of the space program, and we're right at the heart of it here in Louisiana. I could go on about it. Again, an area I'm passionate about, but we'll try to cover as much ground as we can today. Over in South Louisiana, and moving towards Southeast Louisiana with perhaps developments in Plaquemine, Venture Global and others, Cheniere Sempra, are moving LNG. This is a recent photo of the site of a $7 billion investment that will come online later this year. You're seeing a LNG storage tank in that slide. There's two of them there. Actually, they are the largest LNG storage tanks in the world once they're completed and begin to operate. So really just amazing things happening here in Louisiana. This is far south in Cameron Parish, so it's out of sight. But what's transpiring there is just nothing short of incredible, and another area that I could go on and talk about. But anyway, we're running a great department. We're getting a lot of third-party recognition. That's Norman pointed out, we're the only accredited agency in the nation. There's a lot of good shops out there, but accreditation tends to be around, say, G&O Inc. or a similar organization. The states don't typically pass muster or have a desire to dive in as deeply as we have. But I'm proud that I've got a great team here, and we stay organized. And for the agency, the International Economic Development Council, to accredit you, they'll not only look at your budget and marketing activities and many things that you do, but they'll actually go out and talk to your stakeholders and say, what kind of job do you think they're doing? And so, again, great recognition for us, and we're pleased to have that. We've had a number of big wins across 2020, 58. I'm very proud that we've got 28 different parishes represented in those 58 project wins. That was a tough year, but it still came away at about $12.7 billion in new capital investment, 3,100 new direct jobs, and if you add the indirect, that'll take us to 10.5 there. And we put a lot of emphasis on retaining the jobs that we have. That's another thing that we do that's really great in my view, is work closely with our existing companies out there. to figure out growth strategies and work closely with them. You know this from your own customer base, that it's much easier to be working with your existing clients than to try to go out and find new ones. Not that you won't welcome that opportunity or take advantage of it when you can, but in terms of dancing with the one that brung you, you've got a lot better opportunities business-wise to make those accomplishments. Got off to a good start in 2021, 11 project wins here at about $3.6 billion in new capital investment. A lot of strength in our pipeline right now. And, those are probably some of the things that we want to talk about. Certainly, we're having big challenges in Lake Charles region, Southwest Louisiana, so decimated by the Laura and Delta, and then these recent rains and floodings have just added insult to injury. So we spend a fair amount of time making sure that we're fully supporting that part of our state. We put emphasis on our military installations in Louisiana, Barksdale Air Force Base, Fort Polk, Belle Chase, and other military installations in the Southeast Louisiana region. Collectively, that's about 77,000 jobs for us. That's about a $7.7 billion annual economic impact through the Department of Defense. It doesn't just happen. You have to go and be very aggressive in Congress and in the Pentagon to make sure that, again, you're harvesting what you can from all the federal programs. You're fighting off closures and realignments and doing all the things appropriate to keep installations strong. Again, a passion for me, and I could go on about that, but just know that under the umbrella of Louisiana economic development, and we like to talk about, the big project wins that we have. I guess that's sort of the sexier side of all of this, but really it's managing a diverse portfolio with all the important elements that are in it that allow us to be successful. A lot of chatter about Amazon and their presence in our state. I got to tell you, that's something that we've been working on for a number of years, going back a long way. Certainly in competition for that headquarters that they wanted, but when they narrowed it to the top 20, we weren't in the midst, but they wanted things like robust metro transportation in terms of like subways and those kinds of things that we just didn't have the infrastructure, the sheer numbers to support. I mean, I always get a little testy when they want to say, well, Louisiana versus Texas. Well, you're saying 28 million people versus 4.6 million people. They just have a lot more to work with. 4.6 million puts us as a direct, compare me with the greater Houston area and as a state. And then maybe we have a little more fairness to that competition. But in terms of Amazon, some great announcements, 500 jobs in Karen Crow. That's all under construction. They had a little challenge with some of that recently, but they're moving forward. You may have seen our announcement up in Shreveport with a $200 million project and 1,000 jobs coming to that area. And the worst kept secret in Baton Rouge might be in the direct vicinity of Cortana Mall. But as you're seeing a lot of activity over there, I don't think we're far from hearing officially from that company that may be engaged here with what their plans are. But I think you'll be very impressed when that rolls out. It was also great in the Lafayette area to recently announce a protective personal equipment, PPE manufacturing venture, about $150 million investment there. We were standing on the 400,000 square foot slab that had been poured. And it's a joint venture with Ochsner for Ochsner to be able to create all the PPE that they need in their hospital systems, and then be able to market the elements that they don't have direct use for in their own supply chain, and certainly makes our state and our nation more resilient. We're not dependent on production of these kinds of critical elements from overseas. So for a lot of reasons, that was a big win for us in Broussard. And there's another important, particularly for you in the real estate industry, element to I want to highlight here. And that is 4 of our recent announcements, and certainly the PPE manufacturing and the Amazon 1,000 job footprint up in Shreveport areas, both were announced on LED certified sites. And our certified sites program has sort of 2 wings to it, industrial sites and business sites. And certified sites, again, go to our website, opportunitylouisiana.com, and take a look at those. It's proving to be a great accelerator in the market for us to have inventory that is basically shovel ready. Our certified sites program is robust. There are other states that have certified sites, but I don't think that they have the depth of commitment and the quality of our program. And here's what I mean by that. We do, from the state's perspective, a 75-25 cost share on the various elements to have a third-party engineer go out and produce what's needed. And that could be anything from environmental phase 1 to boundary surveys to a whole list of qualifying elements that it takes to go through our program. Now, we pre-qualify, and we're trying to build our own balanced portfolio. We're in all 8 regions of the state, and that we're well located. It's not open to just any parcel, but rather we'll evaluate it that it's near port, near rail, near highway transportation, near municipal services in terms of water, sewer, power is readily available, those kinds of things. But where we see the convergence of favorable development factors, and those are the kind of parcels that you want to be involved with as well, we're building that inventory and getting those sites certified so that all the relevant engineering data is at our fingertips when the doorbell rings and there's a consultant with a project or a corporation that wants to expand and says, what are the opportunities here in Louisiana? And so this program, which I think we're roughly at about 120 certified sites across the state right now. I tell my folks every day, I'm not trying to have 150 certified sites, although, hey, that would be great. What I'm really trying to do is have inventory on the shelf and see turnover in that inventory. So to have 4 of those sites reduce our number of available certified sites, and that's what I'm looking for is that delta. So a great program that you may wish to look into to get it, and it's available to private property owners. It's not necessarily that a parish or a township would own these parcels. So it's a great way to leverage state resources. It's a win-win for us because, as I've stated, this readiness factor in a fast-moving economy puts us ahead of the pack many times, and that's proven out to be the case. Could circle back and talk about another of the areas that we've moved rather quickly over. I think the only other one that I saw maybe in the solicitation of information that people might wanted to talk about was the Shell closing a refinery over in Convent. That occurred, I guess, at the end of 2020. They had marketed that refinery site and been unable to find a buyer. And just as you wouldn't operate an asset that's running at a loss. You'd try to curb what your losses are. So they've had to close that facility, and they're continuing to discuss internally whether they may repurpose that facility or find a qualified buyer for it. Certainly, we're interested in seeing a resurgence of the jobs that would come with that. We're also experiencing over there in St. James Parish and in other parishes in Louisiana something that you should be mindful of, and that is a great deal of rhetoric around organized protesters in the environmental sector. And our companies operate responsibly. They operate with requirements from the EPA, from Louisiana DEQ. There's no one asleep at the wheel. They're very careful about execution of testing and all the things that go into monitoring these kinds of companies and permitting these kinds of companies. And I'm very proud of the environmental record of the major advanced chemical manufacturing companies that we have. And to hear these smear campaigns and people standing in the way of progress when the local population, when the local elected officials all are of one voice, that they understand these industries and they know that there are great jobs, great opportunities associated with them. To hear them painted as being irresponsible and the negative rhetoric that blows onto the scene that can, over time, erode the fabric in an industry that we have. So I think something to be cautious with. I know you all work closely with Jim Harris. He's on the front lines of helping us push back against this false information. The governor recently testified in Washington, D.C. before the Senate Committee on Energy of the important role that Louisiana plays in the national economy, in the global economy, but that we do so in a very, very responsible manner. And anyway, where you can to help us continue to make that important case, greatly appreciated. So with that, I'll take a time out and open up for any questions that you might have.
Hey, Don, that's great. And there's one that was typed in from Chris Gardner. What's your thoughts on potential for automotive manufacturing in the state in terms of looking like what Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina are seeing with projects over in their areas with electric cars? Are there new opportunities in that arena we can capitalize on?
Generally, we proceed with all these projects. In terms of cars, there's been such a huge investment across the South. We were at the leading part of that with the General Motors plant that we had in Shreveport, and then other automobile manufacturers populated other areas of the nation, all the way from Ohio, but certainly Alabama, South Carolina, Georgia were all recipients of plants. Even Nissan is over in Mississippi. But there's so much capacity on the ground right now that it's hard to imagine that there's going to be additional automotive assembly facilities. They can just ramp to 2 or 3 shifts at existing facilities. More likely, I think, is, again, this pivot to battery plants are something that we're competing for now. And other components of these newer vehicles that are going to be stronger and lighter. That's going to have to do with composites. Going to have to do with the kinds of things that we are supporting through the National Center of Advanced Manufacturing, which has long had a focus on NASA, but recently a 7 university system was awarded a $20 million award from the National Science Foundation for research and development of what is a new frontier of additive manufacturing. You can think of that as 3D printing and looking for that metal dust that can go into a 3D printer and print out components that are strong enough for aviation and aerospace. So that's an area that we're very engaged in, and not only in say vehicles, which come to mind, but also in the aviation and aerospace sector. There's going to be new technologies introduced and some great opportunity out there that we're very engaged in pursuing at Chenault, in Lake Charles, at England, in Alexandria, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and then even the addition of Breeze Airways in New Orleans recently represents an opportunity for us to do maintenance, repair, and overhaul operations as well. So look for automotive, but maybe in newer technologies than the traditional kinds of vehicles that have been produced.
I know you touched on, Don, the sawmill industry and the expansions there around the state. What can you tell the commercial realtors here, like the scope of what you're looking for possibly in what they're looking to do in terms of the future with that industry really heating up. Obviously, one of the problems we're seeing now in construction, obviously, is the high price of cost of goods, particularly lumber. But with the sawmills expanding, what can you give them some insight on what you're looking for? You see people wanting to move here, expand their operations. What are they looking for?
Yeah, so I would say what you'd want to do is in rank order is probably number one, that there's adequate wood supply. The wood basket and Louisiana Forestry Association, Buck Vanderstein and others have that data readily available for evaluation. And sometimes it's the types of wood that they're looking for. Beyond that, then you get into, again, these secondary products, which is where's the waste going to go? What's my triangulation to the nearest folks that are going to pay me for the waste product coming out? And then that can be in form of pellets, or that can be in the form of input to pulp and paper operations that are there, or maybe just getting it to port and barging it to another location. So it's those secondary impacts that make you efficient, and the logistics around that. And then, of course, once you're there, those operations are going to want to have a certain support system in terms of trucking industry that's able to move, and the harvest industry that comes in and gathers all of that. So we are seeing certainly growth in that sector. We're still growing more wood fiber in our state than we're harvesting. So some really positive things in that sector that's kind of been asleep for a while. But whether it's the modernization, the way that these new close to $200 million, at least it's $150 million for these advanced computerized dimensional lumber production facilities to push out. There's a lot of study that goes into those investment decisions.
Great. A couple more, and then if you want to ask, we've got about 8 minutes left. Unmute your phone and try one at a time if you've got a question that was not covered. I see one more in the chat box. Any updates, if you can even give it? A lot of this is confidential on the Chennault project.
I'm liking where we are with Chennault, and certainly we spend a lot of time and focus there, as we do with England, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans as well. But there's a good diverse array of aviation operations there at Chennault, so that's giving us more lanes to track growth opportunities. Certainly we're looking at the investment now may be available in terms of infrastructure. If there's some ways that we can leverage that, get some more hangar space out there at any one of those installations that I've spoken about, are all going to help us. We were really doing well. The airline industries, air cargo industries, at the end of 19, we're going great guns. Certainly the pandemic shut everything down, but there were at one time more people flying and more aircraft flying, and that creates more maintenance hours that need to be executed again. So I see it as a very viable lane for us. We're trying to build up the infrastructure with the A&P schools that support this, and certainly try to gather those talented workers. That's another part of the critical path method, that you have to have all of it in order to make it work. And so something we have a focus on right now with our Fast Start program, and trying to strengthen the workforce pipeline that you need to support the growth of these kinds of industries.
One more we have in the box here, with the heavy interest of solar developers that have been optioning large tracts of land last couple of years with solar development. You actually see that happening on a large scale moving forward?
I'm very bullish on solar, and I'm hopeful that our elected leaders get it right. I don't want to see these solar arrays pushed over into Texas, Arkansas, and Mississippi. I think they're a great fit in Louisiana. I've heard some of our elected leaders complain that, well, this is just one job. But when I hear that, I think they're looking at it through the wrong lens. Economic development is the importation of wealth, okay? And so we often do measure by jobs and investments. But in the case of the solar arrays, and one was put on pause at the Board of Commerce and Industry in its most recent meeting. We'll revisit that. But these solar arrays, and particularly if they get a industrial tax exemption program that lowers their millage to 20% until the 10-year time frame goes by, and then they come on the tax rolls at the full millage, you're looking at a 30 to 40 year investment. It's going to have a significant revenue stream for the parish on day one at 20% of millage. And when it comes off in years 10 through 30 or 10 through 40, it's going to be a great income generator. So look past that one job. If you are a rural community where largely these are situated, what's your priority? You want broadband? You want rural health care? You want money for roads and bridges? This is a pipeline that doesn't place any burden on your community. There's not kids in schools. There's not more cars on the road. There's not more law enforcement requirements. This is just a cash cow that you can park on available acreage. It can't just go anywhere. They're going to want to be near transmission lines and maybe hopefully a distribution or transformer station out there, because it's going to lower the required infrastructure costs. But at those locations where one of these fits, and you'll see a lot of them proposed and not necessarily a lot of them actually on the ground. But I think for those parishes that are fortunate enough to get the investment decision green-lighted, that it represents a tremendous opportunity to gather revenues, and at the parish level, they can direct those millage revenues again back to broadband, back to roads, back to healthcare, their choice. But to forego those opportunities is going to push those arrays into other states. It's a good thing for the planet, and I would argue a good thing for a local economy.
Great information on that. I'm going to call one more time. Does anybody, if they even want to hit their unmute button, does anybody have any follow-up questions on anything that Don did not cover this morning before we conclude our session?
And I've got one more while we're waiting for your response there, and I welcome that. But it occurs to me that you've recently seen the Port of New Orleans do a MOU with both St. Tammany Parish and another one with Tangipahoa Parish. This is around, again, this expanded port capacity that we're seeing globally. Wonderful opportunities to expand both a terminal, a container terminal in the greater New Orleans area. But to help that, they also looking to do more distribution centers, fulfillment centers. And that's why they're reaching out to St. Tammany and to Tangipahoa to help develop maybe some of those DC kinds of opportunities. Why is it different? Why is it better? Well, we're taking advantage of about $14 billion in flood protection that's been installed by the Corps of Engineers in the greater New Orleans area. And we're taking advantage of the short line over there, the public belt system coming out of private ownership and now under ownership by the Port of New Orleans. So it doesn't have to operate with a profit motive. It can operate with a logistics supply chain efficiency motive. And the $250 million contract underway with the Corps of Engineers to dredge the Mississippi River, the lower Mississippi River channel to 50 feet from New Orleans all the way to Baton Rouge. So these developments have set the stage for something that's new on the global competition for container growth and development, along with the tremendous capacity that we've been establishing at our advanced chemical manufacturing facilities that bag their product and put it into these containers to go global. So there's some new dynamics pushing this marketability in the for international commerce and a very active sector. So something that you may want to have keep an eye on and consider growth opportunities in that region that will be around these enhanced global shipments that we're trying to achieve through container industry.
Wonderful, wonderful. What advice would you give? Obviously, you're talking to the cream of the crop here on here, the CCIMs in commercial real estate that represent not only the small business owners, but also large, individuals that own different projects or properties or land. What advice would you give them in working with your office to be able to maximize their efforts in bringing clients that are looking to do some things in the state of Louisiana, whether in state or coming from out of state?
Well, I know you think in terms sometimes of MLS, but we have our sites and building database. So that's basically a free marketing service available there for sites that are either in a business site, 10 to 25 acres for a tech park or those kinds of smaller tracts, or the industrial sites, 25 acres and up, that can qualify again for our certified sites program. I think we can be great partners in that element. Certainly, you all do some very important work at the legislature. Your representation through Harrisonville and others over there is a great network for us. A lot of times you can take care of business and say things more succinctly and in direct communications over there that are very helpful. So I'm just appreciative of the partnership that we have with many of your brokers and real estate professionals. It's absolutely critical to us. A project doesn't locate in the state. Well, it does, but it locates in a parish on a parcel. And this is the inventory that we jointly try to develop. So we look for those win-win partnerships and look forward with working with all of your members, Norman.
Well, thank you. Well, Secretary Pierson, it's truly been an honor and have you this morning speak to our CCIM members from around the state. We applaud and appreciate truly the job you do and your team does at LED. And we're certainly, anytime we can get you to give us an update, it's certainly a wealth of knowledge. It's informative, and we truly know the hard work that your team, yourself and your team are doing over at LED, and we appreciate everything.
Thank you for that acknowledgement, Norman. And let's do it again in a few months when I can bring you back some updates. Happy to do that. Okay.
Great to see everyone, and have a great rest of your week. Hey, Richard, good to see everyone. Carl.
Hey, Carl.
Yeah.